Imagine finding a penny in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, yet collectors quietly examine it under bright lights and magnifiers, hoping it might be something special. Today, we're talking about one of those coins, penny most people overlook. The 1979 D Lincoln penny. At first glance, this coin feels familiar. The small, brown, and worth just 1 cent in everyday life. But behind that simple appearance is a story tied to American history, minting changes, and a few surprising details that can make certain examples far more interesting than you might expect. The 1979 D Lincoln penny was made in the United States at the Denver Mint. The small letter D below the year tells you exactly where it came from. In 1979, the U.S. Mint was producing hundreds of millions of pennies every year to keep up with everyday commerce. Gas was cheaper than today, paper money bought more, and pennies still played an important role in daily transactions. This coin belongs to the Lincoln Memorial Penny Series, which began in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. For decades, Americans carried Lincoln's face in their pockets without thinking much about it. By 1979, this design had already become one of the most recognizable coins in the country. The front of the coin shows Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. His expression is calm and serious, symbolizing leadership and stability. Above his head is the word liberty, and behind him is the motto, "In God We Trust." Below his shoulder, you'll find the date 1979, and just beneath that, the D Mint mark. On the back of the coin is the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, making this one of the few U.S. coins at the time to feature the same person on both sides. The words United States of America appear along the top, E pluribus unum sits above the memorial, and 1 cent is clearly written along the bottom. In terms of metal, the 1979 D penny is made mostly of copper. It contains about 95% copper and 5% zinc. This is important because just a few years later, in 1982, the U.S. Mint would switch to a mostly zinc composition to save money. That means the 1979 D penny comes from the final era of traditional copper cents, which already gives it a small place in history. So with hundreds of millions made, why do people even talk about this penny? The answer lies in condition, rarity within normal coins, and minting errors. Most 1979 D pennies are worth only 1 cent. That's the truth. But collectors don't search for average coins. They search for the exceptions. Condition is everything. A 1979 D penny that has been heavily used, scratched, or darkened from years of circulation is common. But a coin that looks nearly perfect, with bright original red color, sharp details, and no visible wear, becomes far more interesting. These are known as uncirculated coins, and they are much harder to find today than you might think. Some high-grade examples, especially those professionally graded by major coin grading services, have sold for surprising amounts. While most are still affordable, top-condition pieces have reached prices in the hundreds of dollars at auction, simply because so few survive in near-perfect shape. Then there are mint errors, which are where things get truly exciting. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the striking process. In 1979, pennies were being produced at incredible speeds, and mistakes were unavoidable. Some 1979 D pennies show off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned. Others have doubled lettering, where parts of the text appear slightly doubled due to a misaligned die. There are also coins with die cracks, missing letters, or unusual thickness. In extremely rare cases, a penny might be struck on the wrong metal planchet, such as one intended for a different coin. These error coins are not common, but when they do appear, collectors pay close attention. One genuine double die error from 1979 can be worth many times more than face value, depending on how strong and visible the doubling is. These are not easy to spot, and many people have spent years searching through rolls of pennies hoping to find one. Real auction results show just how wide the value range can be. Circulated 1979 D pennies often sell for only a few cents when sold in bulk. Clean, uncirculated examples might sell for a few dollars. But top-grade, professionally certified coins with full red color have sold for hundreds of dollars when two collectors compete for the same rare quality level. This doesn't mean every 1979 D penny is valuable. It means the right 1979 D penny can be. If you're wondering how to identify a real one, it starts with simple observation. First, Check the date and mint mark. It must clearly say 1979, with a small d below the date. The details should be sharp, not blurry or melted looking. Next, weigh the coin if possible. A genuine copper penny from this era should weigh about 3.11 grams. A large difference could mean damage, wear, or something unusual worth further inspection. Look closely at the lettering and Lincoln's face using a magnifying glass. Watch for doubling, uneven spacing, or missing details. Be cautious, though. Damage can sometimes look like an error, but true mint errors usually have smooth, natural-looking surfaces rather than rough or scratched areas. Fake pennies are rare, simply because most are not valuable enough to counterfeit. However, altered coins do exist. Some people try to change dates or mint marks. That's why collectors rely on professional grading services when serious money is involved. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1979 D penny. This coin was minted during a time when the US was still debating whether to eliminate the penny altogether, a conversation that continues even today. It also comes from an era just before major changes in coin composition and design. Another interesting detail is that many people saved pennies in jars during the late 1970s and early 1980s. That means thousands of unsearched 1979 D pennies may still be sitting in old containers, waiting to be examined more closely. Collectors today love this coin not because it is rare in general, but because it represents opportunity. It's affordable, accessible, and still possible to find in everyday places. It reminds people that coin collecting isn't just about million-dollar rarities. It's about history, curiosity, and the thrill of discovery. For new collectors, the 1979 D Lincoln penny is a perfect starting point. For experienced collectors, it's a challenge to find in flawless condition or with a genuine mint error. And for everyday people, it's a reminder that even the smallest coin can have a story worth telling. So the next time you see a penny dated 1979 with a small d beneath the year, don't dismiss it too quickly. Hold it up to the light. Look a little closer. Because sometimes, the most ordinary-looking coins are the ones that quietly connect us to history, craftsmanship, and the timeless hope that something small might turn out to be special. Imagine pulling a single penny from your pocket and realizing it has quietly survived more than 40 years of American history. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary. But what if that simple penny has a story most people never notice, and a value that depends on details almost everyone ignores? Today, we're talking about the 1981 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin many Americans have held, spent, or forgotten, yet one that still sparks curiosity among collectors and everyday people alike. The 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint in Philadelphia. When a penny has no mint mark, it usually means it was made there. In 1981, billions of pennies were struck, and millions of them entered daily circulation. These coins were never meant to be special. They were made to buy newspapers, candy, and coffee, passing quietly from hand to hand. But coins have a way of becoming more interesting as time passes. What was once common can become meaningful not because of age alone, but because of condition, history, and small differences that only time reveals. To understand this penny, we need to go back to the early 1980s. America was changing. Inflation was high, interest rates were rising, and the cost of producing coins was becoming a serious issue for the U.S. Mint. Copper prices were climbing, and the government was already considering ways to make pennies cheaper to produce. In 1981, the Lincoln cent was still made mostly of copper. It contained about 95% copper, with a small amount of zinc. This would soon change. Just 1 year later, in 1982, the mint switched to zinc cores coated with copper, creating the lighter pennies we know today. That makes 1981 one of the final years of the classic copper Lincoln cent era. The design of the coin was familiar. On the front, Abraham Lincoln's portrait, first introduced in 1909 to honor his 100th birthday. His calm expression, strong profile, and timeless presence remained unchanged in 1981. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial, which had appeared on pennies since 1959. Inside the memorial, if you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln sitting between the columns. The 1981 no-mint mark penny weighs about 3.11 grams, heavier than modern pennies. Its rich copper color, when preserved, has a warm tone that many collectors prefer over newer issues. So if billions were made, why does this coin still matter? The answer lies in condition and errors. Most 1981 pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. But collectors don't look at coins the way most people do. They look at surfaces, shine, sharpness, and flaws. A 1981 penny that never circulated, meaning it was never used in everyday transactions, can look dramatically different from one that spent years in pockets and jars. In uncirculated condition, especially with full original mint luster, a 1981 no-mint mark penny can sell for several dollars. In very high grades, certified by professional grading services, some examples have sold for much more. There are also error coins, and this is where interest really grows. Some 1981 pennies were struck off-center, meaning the design is shifted to one side. Others show double details, where letters or numbers appear slightly duplicated. There are pennies with clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing due to a metal cutting error. And there are strike-through errors, where a foreign object interfered during minting. These errors are not common, and that's what makes them valuable. Depending on the type and severity, error coins from 1981 can sell for tens, hundreds, or even thousands of dollars. Auction records show high-grade 1981 Lincoln cents selling for impressive amounts. A perfectly preserved example graded at the highest levels has sold for several $1,000s at major coin auctions. These are rare cases, but they prove that even a modern-looking penny can surprise people. Of course, not every 1981 penny is valuable. Knowing how to identify one properly matters. First, check the date. It should clearly read 1981. Then look just below the date. If there is no letter there, no D and no S, it was made in Philadelphia. That's your no-mint mark penny. Next, weigh it if possible. A genuine 1981 copper penny should weigh around 3.11 grams. A significantly lighter weight could indicate damage, corrosion, or a different metal. Examine the surface closely. Look for unusual marks that don't look like scratches. True mint errors often appear smooth and natural, not jagged or damaged. The lettering should be clear. The edges should be even, unless the coin has a known error. Be cautious of altered coins. Some people attempt to modify pennies to imitate rare errors. If something looks suspicious or too perfect, it's wise to consult a professional coin dealer or submit the coin for authentication. There are also fun and surprising facts about this penny that many people don't know. In 1981 alone, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 4 billion Lincoln cents. That makes it one of the highest mintage years in history. Yet, despite that massive number, truly high-grade examples are surprisingly scarce today. Most were used immediately and worn down over time. Another interesting detail is sound. Copper pennies from 1981 make a slightly different sound when dropped compared to modern zinc pennies. It's subtle, but collectors can often tell the difference instantly. Some people also collect 1981 pennies as part of last of copper collections, focusing on the final years before the metal change. These collections are popular because they mark a clear turning point in U.S. coin history. Collectors love the 1981 no-mint mark penny not because it's rare in quantity, but because it represents a moment. It stands at the edge of change between the old copper tradition and the modern zinc era. It's affordable, accessible, and still full of discovery. For beginners, it's a great entry point into coin collecting. For experienced collectors, it's a challenge to find in perfect condition or with legitimate errors. And for everyday people, it's a reminder that history can hide in the smallest places. The next time you see a penny dated 1981, don't dismiss it. Hold it. Look closely. Ask yourself where it's been and how many hands it passed through before reaching you. Most will be worth just 1 cent. But a few, under the right conditions, tell a story that's worth far more. And that's the real value of the 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. Not just what it might sell for, but what it represents. A quiet witness to American life, still waiting to be noticed. So before you spend that old penny or toss it aside, take another look. Because sometimes the most ordinary coins carry the most unexpected stories. Most people have held this coin in their hand and never gave it a second thought. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet the 1987 D Lincoln penny has a story that surprises many people once they slow down and really look at it. This is the 1987 Lincoln 1-cent coin with a D mint mark, meaning it was made in Denver. At first glance, it seems like just another modern penny. But behind this small copper-colored coin is a moment in American coin history when the rules had already changed, mistakes were quietly slipping into circulation, and collectors today are still searching through jars and drawers hoping to find a special one. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the year 1987. Ronald Reagan was president. The Cold War was still shaping the world. In American pockets, the Lincoln Memorial penny had already been around for nearly 3 decades. By 1987, the penny was no longer made of solid copper like the older coins many people remember. Rising metal prices had forced the U.S. Mint to change how pennies were made earlier in the decade, and that change is key to understanding why this coin matters. The 1987 D penny was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest coin-producing facilities in the United States. That year, the Denver Mint produced well over 4 billion pennies. Yes, billions. This alone tells us something important. Most 1987 D pennies are common. They were made for everyday use to move quickly through cash registers, vending machines, and wallets across the country. No one at the time thought these coins would be saved or studied. But history has a way of turning everyday objects into time capsules. The design of the 1987 D Lincoln penny is familiar to almost every American. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln's profile, designed by Victor David Brenner. This portrait has been used since 1909, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. Above Lincoln's head are the words, "In God We Trust." In front of his face is the word "Liberty," and behind him is the date, 1987, with a small D mint mark just below it. On the back is the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial. Most people never notice that detail, but it's there, hidden in plain sight. The words United States of America and 1 cent frame the building, with E pluribus unum above it. Now let's talk about what this coin is actually made of, because this is where things get interesting. By 1987, pennies were no longer solid copper. Instead, they were made of a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. The coin is about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. This change began in 1982 and continued through the rest of the Lincoln Memorial series. Why does this matter? Because zinc pennies behave very differently over time. They are more prone to corrosion, bubbling, and surface damage. That means finding a 1987 D penny in truly perfect condition today is much harder than people expect. Most were heavily circulated. Many show dull surfaces, spots, or worn details. This is where value starts to appear in everyday condition. A circulated 1987 D penny is worth exactly 1 cent. That part is important to say clearly. There is no hidden fortune in a worn, damaged example pulled from loose change. But coins are not all equal. Condition, errors, and unusual characteristics can change everything. Collectors pay close attention to uncirculated examples, especially those graded by professional services. A 1987 D penny in mint state, meaning it shows no wear from circulation, can sell for several dollars. And if it reaches the highest grades, where the surfaces are clean, the strike is sharp, and the color is bright, prices can climb much higher. At auction, top-graded 1987 D pennies have sold for over $100. That may not sound life-changing, but remember, this is for a coin that once bought almost nothing and was never meant to be saved. The value comes from scarcity in condition, not scarcity in production. Then there are errors. Errors are where collector excitement truly begins. During the minting process, mistakes happen. In 1987, with billions of coins being struck, a small number escaped quality control with noticeable errors. These include off-center strikes, where the design is shifted to one side. There are clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing due to a cutting error. There are weak strikes, doubled letters, and sometimes dramatic die cracks that look like raised lines across the coin point. One of the most interesting things collectors look for on 1987 D pennies is doubling in the lettering or date. True double dies are rare, but mechanical doubling or strike doubling can still add interest and value if clearly visible. Some error examples have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars depending on how dramatic the mistake is and how well the coin is preserved. Because this coin is modern, fakes are uncommon, but altered coins do exist. Some people try to plate zinc pennies to make them look like older copper coins. Others damage coins intentionally to mimic errors. To identify a genuine 1987 D penny, start with the basics. The coin should weigh about 2.5 grams. A solid copper penny would weigh more. The edge should be smooth and consistent, not sharp or irregular unless it is a verified mint error. Look closely at the mint mark. On a real coin, the D mint mark is part of the original strike. It should not look glued on, scratched in, or unusually shaped. The surface should show natural aging, not artificial shine or coating. One fun test many collectors do is the sound test. When dropped gently on a hard surface, zinc pennies produce a duller sound than older copper ones. It's a small detail, but it helps connect you to the coin's true composition. There are also surprising facts about this penny that many people don't realize. For example, because zinc corrodes easily, some 1987 pennies have developed bubbles under the copper coating. These bubbles are actually zinc reacting with moisture and air over time. While this damage usually lowers value, it tells a story about how the coin has aged in the real world. Another interesting detail is that 1987 pennies are often used by new collectors as learning tools. Because they are affordable and widely available, they allow people to practice grading, spotting errors, and understanding how condition affects value without risking a lot of money. Collectors today love the 1987 D penny not because it is rare in the traditional sense, but because it represents a turning point. It comes from an era when coins stopped being precious metal objects and became purely practical tokens. It reminds collectors that value is not always about age, but about preservation, history, and context. This coin also connects generations. Many people remember using these pennies as children. Seeing one now brings back memories of pocket change, school lunches, and simpler transactions. That emotional connection matters in collecting more than most people realize. As time goes on, fewer high-quality examples survive. Zinc pennies do not age gracefully. This means that clean, bright, well-struck 1987 D pennies will only become harder to find. Collectors know this, and that is why they continue to search rolls, jars, and collections. So the next time you see a 1987 D Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it. Hold it for a moment. Look at the details. Think about where it's been and what it represents. It may not make you rich, but it might change the way you see everyday coins. And sometimes, the most overlooked pennies are the ones that teach us the most about history, money, and the quiet stories hiding in our pockets. Most people have walked past this coin 1,000 times without ever stopping to look. It hides in change jars, old drawers, and forgotten pockets. But what if one ordinary-looking penny from 1989 could tell a much bigger story than its face value suggests? This is the 1989 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks just like any other penny. Abraham Lincoln faces right. The date sits quietly below, and there's nothing flashy about it. But coins like this often hold secrets that only reveal themselves when you know what to look for. And a no mint mark Lincoln penny means it was made at the Philadelphia Mint. For much of U.S. coin history, Philadelphia did not place a mint mark on coins. So when collectors say no mint mark, they are really talking about where it was made, not a missing detail. In 1989, the Philadelphia Mint was producing massive numbers of pennies, quietly feeding everyday commerce across America. The year 1989 was a turning point in many ways. The Cold War was ending. The Berlin Wall fell. Technology was changing daily life. And while all of that was happening, the U.S. Mint was still producing billions of pennies for a country that relied heavily on cash transactions. Credit cards were growing, but coins were still everywhere. The 1989 Lincoln cent was part of the Lincoln Memorial Series, which began in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This design replaced the wheat ears on the back of earlier pennies. By 1989, Americans had grown up seeing the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, making it one of the most familiar coin designs in U.S. history. The metal composition of the 1989 penny is important. Earlier pennies were mostly copper, but by the 1980s the mint had switched to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. The 1989 penny is about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. That change helped the government save money as copper prices rose, but it also made modern pennies more fragile and prone to damage. On the front of the coin, Lincoln's portrait was designed by Victor David Brenner. His initials, VDB, appear discreetly on the shoulder of Lincoln's coat. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial shows a tiny seated Lincoln statue in the center, visible if you look closely. This level of detail is one reason collectors still appreciate the design. Now, here's where things get interesting. Most 1989 no-mint mark pennies are common. Millions upon millions were struck. In worn condition, they are usually worth only 1 cent. But value in coin collecting is not just about age. It's about condition, rarity, and mistakes. High-grade examples are one area where value begins to rise. A 1989 penny that has never circulated, meaning it shows no wear and retains its original shine, can be worth several dollars. In top condition, professionally graded examples have sold for higher amounts, especially when they show strong detail and clean surfaces. Errors are where collectors really start paying attention. During mass production, mistakes happen. Some 1989 pennies were struck off-center, meaning the design is shifted to one side. Others show weak strikes where parts of the design are faint. There are also double die errors, where letters or numbers appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. One known variety collectors look for is doubling in the date or lettering. These are not easy to spot with the naked eye, but under magnification, they can stand out clearly. A genuine double die penny from 1989 can be worth far more than face value, depending on how strong the doubling is. There have been auction results that surprise people. While a normal circulated 1989 penny is common, error coins have sold for tens, sometimes hundreds of dollars. High-grade mint state examples certified by professional grading services have also reached impressive prices compared to their original value. So how do you know if you have a real and valuable one? Start with the basics. Check the date carefully. Look under the date for a mint mark. If there is no letter, it was made in Philadelphia. Then examine the condition. Is the coin shiny or dull? Are the details sharp or worn smooth? Next, look closely at the lettering. Use a magnifying glass or a phone camera with zoom. Check for doubling in the words, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date. Real double dies show clear separation, not just blurry or worn edges. Weight can also matter. A standard 1989 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, it could be damaged, altered, or in rare cases, struck on the wrong planchet. These wrong planchet errors are rare but highly collectible. Be cautious about fakes or altered coins. Some people try to modify coins to make them look like errors. Filing, carving, or adding marks can fool beginners, but experienced collectors can usually tell the difference. If you think you have something special, professional grading is the safest way to confirm authenticity. Here's a fun fact many people don't know. Even though billions of pennies were made in 1989, far fewer remain in perfect condition today. Pennies circulate heavily, and zinc cores corrode easily once the copper plating is damaged. That makes high-quality survivors harder to find with each passing year. Another surprising detail is how emotional pennies can be for collectors. Many people start collecting from childhood jars or inherited collections. A 1989 penny might remind someone of their early years, a first job, or learning to count change at the kitchen table. Collectors love this coin not because it is the rarest penny ever made, but because it represents the everyday history of America. It's a coin that passed through millions of hands during a year full of global change. It connects ordinary life to larger moments in history. Today, interest in modern pennies is growing. As older copper cents become scarcer and zinc pennies continue to degrade, collectors are paying closer attention to dates like 1989. Error coins, high-grade examples, and well-preserved rolls are increasingly sought after. The 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny teaches an important lesson. Value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden in condition, in tiny details, or in the story behind the object. What looks ordinary can become extraordinary with knowledge and patience. So the next time you see a penny from 1989, don't dismiss it. Hold it. Look at it closely. Because in the world of coin collecting, even the smallest coin can carry a story worth far more than 1 cent. Imagine finding a penny in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, but quietly carries a story from the end of the Cold War, the early days of the modern American economy, and millions of everyday lives. A penny most people would never look at twice. Today, we're talking about that coin. The 1991 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny at first glance. This coin doesn't scream rare or valuable. It doesn't shine like gold. It doesn't have a dramatic error that jumps out instantly. And yet, millions of Americans still ask about it, search for it, and hold on to it. Why? Because sometimes the most interesting coins are the ones hiding in plain sight. The 1991 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint in Philadelphia. And here's something important to understand right away. Coins struck in Philadelphia usually do not carry a mint mark. So when people say no mint mark, they're actually describing a standard Philadelphia issue. This alone makes the coin extremely familiar, but familiarity doesn't mean it lacks meaning or collector interest. The year 1991 was a turning point in American history. The Cold War was ending. The Soviet Union would collapse later that year. The United States was entering a new global role, and everyday Americans were feeling both uncertainty and hope. Gas prices, jobs, and technology were changing fast. And while all of that was happening, the humble Lincoln penny continued to pass quietly from hand to hand. The Lincoln cent design in 1991 was the same design Americans had seen for decades. On the front, Abraham Lincoln's portrait, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. His face looks calm, steady, and thoughtful, a symbol of unity and resilience. Above his head is the word liberty. In front of his face, the date 1991. And below, the familiar words, "In God we trust." On the back, the coin still featured the Lincoln Memorial design, which had been in use since 1959. Inside the memorial, if you look very closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln sitting inside. That detail alone fascinates many collectors. It means Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin, something few U.S. coins can claim to be. Why 1991? The penny's metal composition had already changed from earlier decades. This coin is made mostly of zinc, about 97.5%, with a thin copper coating on the outside. This change happened in the early 1980s to reduce costs. So while the coin looks copper, it's actually zinc at its core. This also explains why many 1991 pennies show bubbling, peeling, or corrosion over time if the copper layer is damaged. So why do people ask about the value of a 1991 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny? The honest answer is that most of them are very common. The Philadelphia Mint produced billions of pennies that year. In average circulated condition, a regular 1991 penny is usually worth just 1 cent, but that's not the whole story. Collectors don't just look at dates. They look at condition, errors, and unusual variations. A 1991 penny that is perfectly preserved, with no wear, no scratches, and full original luster, can be worth more than face value. In uncirculated condition, some examples sell for a few dollars. Coins graded by professional services in very high grades, like MS-67 or higher, can sell for significantly more, sometimes reaching tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on demand. Then there are error coins. This is where things get interesting. Some 1991 Lincoln pennies were struck with mistakes. Off-center strikes, where the design is shifted to one side. Double dies, where letters or numbers appear doubled. Die cracks, where lines appear across the coin due to worn equipment. Broad strikes, where the coin spreads out wider than normal. These errors were never meant to leave the mint, but some slipped through and entered circulation. Error coins are what turn an ordinary penny into a collector's piece. A genuine 1991 error penny can sell for anywhere from $20 to several $100s, depending on the type and severity of the error and its condition. There have been auction listings and collector sales showing this clearly. High-grade uncirculated 1991 pennies certified by professional grading companies have sold for more than $100. Error examples have sold for even more when verified and documented. These aren't everyday prices, but they are real results within the collector market. So how do you tell if your 1991 penny is something special? First, check the date and the front of the coin. It should say 1991 and have no letter under the date. That confirms it was struck in Philadelphia. Next, look closely at the surface. Use a magnifying glass if you have one. Look for doubling on the words liberty or in God we trust. Look at the numbers in the date. Doubling should look like a clear separation, not just a shadow. Then check the edges and shape. Is the coin perfectly round, or does it look stretched or off-center? Turn it over and inspect the Lincoln Memorial. Look for cracks, extra lines, or missing details. Weigh the coin if possible. A standard 1991 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A significant difference could indicate an error or damage. It's also important to understand the difference between real mint errors and damage that happened after the coin left circulation. Scratches, dents, and corrosion usually lower value. True mint errors are part of the original strike and often look smooth and intentional, even when unusual. One surprising fact about the 1991 penny is just how many people keep them. Because the year feels modern, many assume they're worthless. But that same assumption means fewer people check them carefully. That's why error coins can still be found today, decades later, sitting unnoticed in jars, drawers, and old piggy banks. Collectors also love the 1991 Lincoln penny because it represents the final years before major changes to U.S. coin designs. The Lincoln Memorial reverse would be replaced in 2009. And over time, coin production methods and materials continued to evolve. The 1991 penny sits at a crossroads between old and new America. Another fun detail is that children born in 1991 are now adults. That creates a personal connection. Many collectors enjoy owning coins from their birth year or important years in their life. That emotional value often matters just as much as money. Today, the 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny remains one of the most searched modern pennies online. Not because it's always valuable, but because it teaches an important lesson. Every coin has a story. Most are ordinary. A few are extraordinary. And you never know which one you're holding until you look closely. So the next time you see a 1991 penny, don't dismiss it. Turn it over. Study it. Ask questions. Because even the smallest coin can connect you to history, craftsmanship, and the quiet details that most people overlook. And sometimes that curiosity is worth far more than 1 cent. Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket, one you have probably seen 1,000 times before, and discovering that collectors quietly search for the very same coin every day. Not because it looks flashy, not because it's made of gold, but because hidden details and rare conditions can turn an ordinary penny into something surprisingly valuable. Today, we're uncovering the story behind the 1997 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, the 1997 D Lincoln penny looks completely normal. It's a small copper-colored coin that most Americans have spent without a second thought. It was made in Denver, carries Abraham Lincoln's portrait, and feels just like every other modern penny. But beneath that familiar look is a coin with a story, a purpose, and a collector following that continues to grow. The 1997 D Lincoln penny was produced by the United States Mint in Denver during a time of major transition for American coinage. By the late 1990s, pennies were no longer made mostly of copper. Rising metal costs forced the mint to change the penny's composition years earlier, and by 1997, every Lincoln cent was struck on a zinc core with a thin copper coating. This allowed the penny to keep its traditional appearance while costing less to produce. That year, the U.S. Mint struck billions of pennies to meet everyday demand. The Denver Mint alone produced over 4 billion Lincoln cents in 1997. These coins were meant for circulation, designed to be used, spent, and forgotten. No one at the time imagined that some of them would later attract serious attention from collectors. The design of the 1997 D penny is part of the famous Lincoln Memorial series, which ran from 1959 to 2008. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, a design created by Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the phrase "In God We Trust," with liberty to the left and the date to the right. Just below the date sits the small but important D Mint mark, showing the coin was made in Denver. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with the words United States of America across the top and 1 cent at the bottom. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial, making this one of the few U.S. coins at the time to show the same person on both sides. So if billions were made, why would anyone care about the 1997 D penny? The answer lies in condition, rarity within mass production, and errors that slipped past quality control. Most 1997 D pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. But coins that survived without heavy wear are far less common than people realize. Pennies circulate hard. They get scratched, bent, and discolored. Finding a 1997 D penny in pristine condition today is much harder than finding one that's worn down. Collectors pay special attention to coins graded in extremely high condition, especially those labeled mint state. A 1997 D penny with sharp details, full original luster, and no visible damage can be worth many times its face value. Coins graded MS-67 or higher by professional grading services can sell for surprising amounts. Even more interesting are error coins. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the minting process, and the 1997 D penny is known for several types collectors watch for closely. One of the most popular is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank coin isn't positioned correctly during striking, leaving part of the design missing. Another is the broad strike, where the coin is struck without the collar that shapes it, causing it to spread wider than normal. There are also double dies, where parts of the design appear doubled due to a misaligned die. On some 1997 pennies, collectors have reported doubling on letters like Liberty or In God We Trust. While not every doubled-looking coin is valuable, true double dies can be worth significant money. Die cracks and die breaks are another area of interest. As minting equipment wears down, cracks can form in the dies, leaving raised lines or blobs on the coin. Some collectors enjoy these unique marks because no two are exactly alike. Now let's talk real numbers. A circulated 1997 D penny usually sells for 1 cent. But uncirculated examples can sell for a few dollars. When professionally graded in top condition, prices rise quickly. High-grade examples have sold at auction for $20, $50, and in rare cases, over $100. Error coins bring even more excitement. Depending on the type and visibility of the error, a 1997 D penny with a clear mistake can sell for anywhere from $25 to several $100s. Dramatic off-center strikes or major double dies can push values even higher, especially if demand is strong. Of course, whenever money is involved, people worry about fakes. While fake pennies are uncommon, altered coins do exist. Some individuals try to add fake errors or alter mint marks to create artificial value. To identify a genuine 1997 D penny, start with the basics. The coin should weigh about 2.5 grams. The mint mark should look natural and match the style used by the Denver Mint in the 1990s. Added mint marks often look uneven or poorly placed. Examine the coin under magnification. Real errors usually affect multiple areas of the design and show signs of being struck that way. Fake errors often look carved, scratched, or unnatural. When in doubt, professional grading services offer authentication that removes all uncertainty. There are also some fun facts that make the 1997 D penny more interesting than it seems. By 1997, the Lincoln cent had already been in production for nearly 90 years, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. Another surprising detail is how few high-grade pennies actually survive. Even though billions were made, only a tiny fraction remain in near-perfect condition today. This is why modern pennies can still be collectible. The 1997 D penny also represents the end of an era. It comes from the final decade of the Lincoln Memorial design, just before the series transitioned into the bicentennial designs and later the Union Shield reverse. Collectors love this coin not because it's flashy, but because it represents the thrill of the hunt. It's a reminder that valuable coins aren't always old, silver, or rare at first glance. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to look closer. Many collectors enjoy searching rolls of pennies, hoping to find a sharp, untouched 1997 D or a hidden error that slipped through unnoticed. That sense of discovery keeps the hobby alive and exciting. As we come to the end of this story, remember this. The 1997 D Lincoln penny is proof that history doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers through everyday objects we use without thinking. The next time you see a penny dated 1997 with a small d under the date, pause for a moment. Look closer. You might be holding more than spare change. And the real question is, how many stories like this are still hiding in your pocket right now? Most people would never look twice at a penny from 2001. feels too recent, too ordinary. But what if I told you that one small detail on a 2001 Lincoln penny has caused confusion, curiosity, and serious collector interest for years, and that thousands of people may already own this coin without realizing why it matters? Today, we're uncovering the true story behind the 2001 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, what it really is, why people search for it, and when it can actually be worth more than just 1 cent. The 2001 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series. First, introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. By 2001, this design had already been in circulation for more than 90 years, making it one of the most familiar coins in American history. When people hear the phrase no mint mark, it often triggers excitement. In U.S. coinage, mint marks tell us where a coin was made. A D means Denver. An S means San Francisco. But when there is no mint mark at all, many assume it must be rare. Here's where the story becomes interesting. For Lincoln pennies made in Philadelphia, no mint mark is completely normal. In 2001, the Philadelphia Mint produced billions of Lincoln cents, and none of them carried a mint mark. So yes, a 2001 penny with no mint mark was made in Philadelphia, and that part alone does not make it rare. But that doesn't mean the story ends there. To understand why the 2001 no mint mark penny still matters, we need to look at what was happening in America at the time it was made. The year 2001 was a turning point in U.S. history. The country was entering a new millennium, and by the end of that year, everything had changed after the events of September 11th. The economy, public mood, and even how people viewed everyday objects were shifting. Coins minted during this period quietly became part of that historical moment. The Lincoln penny in 2001 still featured the classic design by Victor David Brenner. On the front, Abraham Lincoln's right-facing portrait appears calm and dignified, just as it had for decades. Above his head is the word liberty. To the left is the phrase "In God We Trust," and the date 2001 sits to the right. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. If you look closely, you can actually see Lincoln's statue seated inside the memorial, making this one of the few U.S. coins where the same person appears on both sides. The metal composition of the 2001 penny is also important. By this time, pennies were no longer mostly copper. Instead, they were made of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. This change began in 1982 and makes modern pennies lighter and more vulnerable to damage than older copper cents. Now let's talk about where real value can appear. While a normal 2001 no mint mark penny in circulated condition is worth exactly 1 cent, collectors are not searching for ordinary examples. They are searching for mistakes. Error coins are where this penny becomes interesting. Some 2001 pennies were struck with noticeable errors that slipped past mint quality control. These errors are unintentional, but collectors love them because each one is unique. One known error is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank coin is not properly aligned during striking. If the date and Lincoln's face are still visible, these coins can sell for anywhere from $20 to $100, depending on how dramatic the error is. Another collectible error is a broad strike. This occurs when the coin is struck without the collar that normally gives it its shape. The result is a wider, flatter penny with distorted lettering. Broad-struck 2001 pennies have sold for $30 to $75. There are also doubled die errors, where parts of the design appear doubled, especially in the date or the words "In God We Trust." True doubled dies are rare and valuable. Verified examples from 2001 can sell for several $100s, depending on condition and strength of the doubling. Then there are clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing due to a cutting error in the metal strip. These are easy to spot and often sell in the $25 to $60 range. Condition matters just as much as errors. A regular 2001 no mint mark penny in average circulated condition is worth face value. But in uncirculated condition, especially with a strong strike and full original luster, collector value increases. Coins graded MS-67 or higher by professional grading services can sell for $20 to $50, sometimes more if demand is high. These coins were never used in daily transactions and are increasingly difficult to find in perfect shape. Auction records show that high-grade 2001 Philadelphia pennies have sold for surprising prices, not because they are rare in quantity, but because so few survived in flawless condition. So how do you know if the 2001 penny you have is real and not altered? First, check the weight. A genuine 2001 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A significantly different weight could indicate damage or tampering. Next, look closely at the surface. Real mint errors are part of the metal itself. If something looks scratched, carved, or added later, it is not a true error. Also, beware of fake no-mint mark claims. Some sellers try to remove mint marks from coins, but this is easy to detect under magnification. A genuine Philadelphia penny will show no sign of tampering where a mint mark would be. If you believe you have a valuable error or an unusually high-quality coin, professional grading is the safest way to confirm authenticity. Here's a surprising fact many people don't know. Billions of 2001 pennies were made, but most of them are already gone from circulation. They've been lost, damaged, or melted down through wear and tear. The supply still exists, but pristine examples are disappearing every year. Another interesting detail is that the 2001 penny is part of the final generation of Lincoln cents before major design changes began. Just 8 years later, in 2009, the reverse design would change completely. That makes 2001 part of the closing chapter of the classic memorial era. Collectors also appreciate this coin because it's accessible. You don't need thousands of dollars to start. Many people begin their collecting journey by searching rolls of pennies, hoping to find a high-grade 2001 example or a genuine mint error. That sense of possibility is what keeps collectors interested. The 2001 no-mint mark Lincoln penny represents something bigger than its face value. It reminds us that history doesn't always live in museums or vaults. Sometimes it sits quietly in a jar, a drawer, or the bottom of a pocket. Collectors love this coin not because it guarantees riches, but because it rewards attention. It teaches patience, observation, and the idea that value often hides in plain sight, so the next time you come across a 2001 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Look at it closely. Check the strike. Examine the details. You might be holding nothing more than a single cent, or you might be holding a small but meaningful piece of American numismatic history. And if this ordinary-looking coin made you curious, imagine what other everyday coins might still be waiting to tell their stories. Most people would never look twice at a penny from 2004. Feels too recent, too ordinary, too common. But what if I told you that one small detail on some 2004 Lincoln pennies has quietly turned everyday pocket change into something collectors still search for today? This is the story of the 2004 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin most Americans have handled, spent, or ignored, without realizing what makes it special, and in certain cases, valuable. The coin we're talking about is the Lincoln 1-cent coin dated 2004, with no letter below the date. That missing letter is not a mistake. It actually tells us where the coin was made. When a Lincoln penny has no mint mark, it means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest mint facility in the United States, BY 2004. The Lincoln penny had already been part of American life for more than 90 years. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. And even nearly a century later, in 2004, this humble coin was still being struck in massive numbers to keep up with everyday commerce. The year 2004 was a busy one for the U.S. Mint. America was deep into the early 21st century. Cash was still king for daily purchases, and billions of pennies were being produced each year. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 3 billion Lincoln pennies in 2004 alone, all without a mint mark. So why would anyone care about a penny that seems so common? To understand that, we need to look at the history and purpose of this coin. The Lincoln penny was designed to be affordable, durable, and familiar. In 2004, the design still featured Abraham Lincoln on the front, based on Victor David Brenner's classic portrait, first used in 1909. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been used since 1959. That means the 2004 penny represents the final years of a design era. Just 5 years later, in 2009, the Lincoln Memorial reverse would be replaced with special designs. That alone gives the 2004 penny a quiet place in history, as part of the last generation of memorial-backed cents. The metal composition of the 2004 Lincoln penny is also important. By this time, pennies were no longer made mostly of copper. Instead, they were composed of 97.5% zinc, with a very thin copper coating. This change had happened back in 1982, But many people still assume all older pennies are solid copper. The 2004 penny is not, but that doesn't mean it lacks collector interest. What really sets certain 2004 no-mint mark pennies apart are small details, condition, and errors. In everyday condition, a circulated 2004 penny is usually worth exactly 1 cent. But collectors don't search their change for average coins. They look for exceptions. One of the most desirable versions of the 2004 no-mint mark penny is a coin in pristine, uncirculated condition. These coins were never used in everyday transactions. They often came directly from mint rolls or collector sets. When graded professionally and preserved perfectly, some high-grade examples have sold for surprising amounts. Another area of interest is mint errors. These are mistakes that happened during the manufacturing process. While most 2004 pennies are ordinary, a small number left the mint with noticeable errors that make them valuable. Some collectors search for off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned. Others look for broad strikes, where the coin was struck without the collar that normally shapes it. There are also double die errors, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment in the die used to strike the coin. One of the most talked about errors on modern Lincoln pennies is doubling in the date or lettering, especially on words like liberty or in God we trust. While true double die errors are rare, they do exist, and a confirmed example from 2004 can command serious attention from collectors. Now let's talk about real-world value. A typical circulated 2004 no-mint mark penny is worth 1 cent. That's the honest truth. But value changes quickly with condition and rarity. Uncirculated examples graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC have sold at auction for anywhere from $10 to over $100, depending on grade. Coins graded MS67 or higher, which means nearly perfect, are especially hard to find for modern pennies. In several public auctions, high-grade 2004 Philadelphia cents have sold in the range of $150 to $300, simply because so few survive in flawless condition. Error coins can bring even more. A genuine double die or major strike error from 2004 has sold for several $100s, and in rare cases over $1,000, depending on how dramatic and well-documented the error is. So how do you know if the 2004 penny you're holding is real, valuable, or just ordinary? First, look below the date. If there is no letter, it's a Philadelphia coin. That's normal. Next, examine the condition. Sharp details, bright surfaces, and no signs of wear increase value. If Lincoln's hair and cheek look flat, or the memorial steps are worn down, the coin has circulated. Then, check for errors. Use a magnifying glass. Look closely at the letters and numbers. True errors usually look consistent and intentional, not random damage. Scratches, dents, and corrosion reduce value and are not mint errors. Be cautious of fakes or altered coins. Some people try to create fake errors by damaging coins on purpose. Real mint errors happen during production and follow specific patterns. If you think you've found something unusual, professional grading is the safest way to confirm authenticity. One surprising fact about the 2004 Lincoln penny is how many still exist in collections today. Because it's a modern coin, many collectors saved rolls when it was released. That's why most examples aren't rare. But paradoxically, that also means top-quality survivors stand out more sharply against the rest. Another fun detail is that many Americans who were born in 2004 are now old enough to collect coins themselves. For some, this penny represents their birth year, making it personally meaningful even if it's not extremely valuable. Collectors today appreciate the 2004 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it tells a quiet story. It's a reminder of a time just before major changes in coin design, before digital payments became dominant, and before the Lincoln Memorial reverse disappeared from circulation. It's also a lesson in coin collecting itself. Not every valuable coin looks old. Not every rare coin is made of gold or silver. Sometimes value hides in condition, precision, and tiny details most people overlook. The 2004 Lincoln penny teaches patience. It rewards careful observation. And it proves that even modern coins can earn a place in a serious collection. So the next time you see a penny dated 2004 with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the details. Because while most are ordinary, a small number carry a story, a surprise, and for the right collector, real value. And that's what keeps people searching their change, roll after roll, year after year. Because sometimes, history isn't hidden in ancient treasure chests. Sometimes, it's sitting quietly in your pocket, waiting to be noticed. Most people would never look twice at a penny from 2004. Feels too recent, too ordinary, too common. But what if I told you that one small detail on some 2004 Lincoln pennies has quietly turned everyday pocket change into something collectors still search for today? This is the story of the 2004 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin most Americans have handled, spent, or ignored without realizing what makes it special, and in certain cases, valuable. The coin we're talking about is the Lincoln 1-cent coin dated 2004, with no letter below the date. That missing letter is not a mistake. It actually tells us where the coin was made. When a Lincoln penny has no mint mark, it means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest mint facility in the United States, BY 2004. The Lincoln penny had already been part of American life for more than 90 years. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. And even nearly a century later, in 2004, this humble coin was still being struck in massive numbers to keep up with everyday commerce. The year 2004 was a busy one for the U.S. Mint. America was deep into the early 21st century. Cash was still king for daily purchases, and billions of pennies were being produced each year. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 3 billion Lincoln pennies in 2004 alone, all without a mint mark. So why would anyone care about a penny that seems so common? To understand that, we need to look at the history and purpose of this coin. The Lincoln penny was designed to be affordable, durable, and familiar. In 2004, the design still featured Abraham Lincoln on the front, based on Victor David Brenner's classic portrait, first used in 1909. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been used since 1959. That means the 2004 penny represents the final years of a design era. Just 5 years later, in 2009, the Lincoln Memorial reverse would be replaced with special designs. That alone gives the 2004 penny a quiet place in history, as part of the last generation of memorial-backed cents. The metal composition of the 2004 Lincoln penny is also important. By this time, pennies were no longer made mostly of copper. Instead, they were composed of 97.5% zinc, with a very thin copper coating. This change had happened back in 1982, but many people still assume all older pennies are solid copper. The 2004 penny is not, but that doesn't mean it lacks collector interest. What really sets certain 2004 no-mint mark pennies apart are small details, condition, and errors. In everyday condition, a circulated 2004 penny is usually worth exactly 1 cent. But collectors don't search their change for average coins. They look for exceptions. One of the most desirable versions of the 2004 no-mint mark penny is a coin in pristine, uncirculated condition. These coins were never used in everyday transactions. They often came directly from mint rolls or collector sets. When graded professionally and preserved perfectly, some high-grade examples have sold for surprising amounts. Another area of interest is mint errors. These are mistakes that happened during the manufacturing process. While most 2004 pennies are ordinary, a small number left the mint with noticeable errors that make them valuable. Some collectors search for off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned. Others look for broad strikes, where the coin was struck without the collar that normally shapes it. There are also double die errors, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment in the die used to strike the coin point. One of the most talked about errors on modern Lincoln pennies is doubling in the date or lettering, especially on words like liberty or in God we trust. While true double die errors are rare, they do exist, and a confirmed example from 2004 can command serious attention from collectors. Now let's talk about real-world value. A typical circulated 2004 no-mint mark penny is worth 1 cent. That's the honest truth. But value changes quickly with condition and rarity. Uncirculated examples graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC have sold at auction for anywhere from $10 to over $100, depending on grade. Coins graded MS67 or higher, which means nearly perfect, are especially hard to find for modern pennies. In several public auctions, high-grade 2004 Philadelphia cents have sold in the range of $150 to $300, simply because so few survive in flawless condition. error coins can bring even more. A genuine double die or major strike error from 2004 has sold for several $100s, and in rare cases over $1,000, depending on how dramatic and well-documented the error is. So how do you know if the 2004 penny you're holding is real, valuable, or just ordinary? First, look below the date. If there is no letter, it's a Philadelphia coin. That's normal. Next, examine the condition. Sharp details, bright surfaces, and no signs of wear increase value. If Lincoln's hair and cheek look flat, or the memorial steps are worn down, the coin has circulated. Then, check for errors. Use a magnifying glass. Look closely at the letters and numbers. True errors usually look consistent and intentional, not random damage. Scratches, dents, and corrosion reduce value and are not mint errors. Be cautious of fakes or altered coins. Some people try to create fake errors by damaging coins on purpose. Real mint errors happen during production and follow specific patterns. If you think you've found something unusual, professional grading is the safest way to confirm authenticity. One surprising fact about the 2004 Lincoln penny is how many still exist in collections today. Because it's a modern coin, many collectors saved rolls when it was released. That's why most examples aren't rare. But paradoxically, that also means top-quality survivors stand out more sharply against the rest. Another fun detail is that many Americans who were born in 2004 are now old enough to collect coins themselves. For some, this penny represents their birth year, making it personally meaningful even if it's not extremely valuable. Collectors today appreciate the 2004 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it tells a quiet story. It's a reminder of a time just before major changes in coin design, before digital payments became dominant, and before the Lincoln Memorial reverse disappeared from circulation. It's also a lesson in coin collecting itself. Not every valuable coin looks old. Not every rare coin is made of gold or silver. Sometimes value hides in condition, precision, and tiny details most people overlook. The 2004 Lincoln penny teaches patience. It rewards careful observation. And it proves that even modern coins can earn a place in a serious collection. So the next time you see a penny dated 2004 with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the details. Because while most are ordinary, a small number carry a story, a surprise, and for the right collector, real value. And that's what keeps people searching their change, roll after roll, year after year. Because sometimes, history isn't hidden in ancient treasure chests. Sometimes, it's sitting quietly in your pocket, waiting to be noticed. Imagine finding a penny in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, yet carries a quiet story of American history, modern minting, and the tiny details collectors obsess over. Today, we're looking closely at a coin almost everyone has seen, but very few have truly understood: the 2006 D-Mint mark Lincoln penny. This coin is a modern 1-cent piece of the United States, produced in the year 2006 at the Denver Mint. The small letter D on the front of the coin tells us exactly where it was made. At first glance, it seems like just another everyday penny, the kind you might toss into a jar or spend without thinking. But like many U.S. coins, its real story is hidden in the details. The Lincoln penny itself has a long and important history. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. This made it the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 2006, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for nearly a century, making it one of the most familiar coins in American life. The version made in 2006 belongs to the later era of Lincoln pennies, just a few years before a major design change in 2009. The year 2006 was not chosen for any special anniversary or celebration. Instead, it represents a normal production year when the U.S. Mint was focused on making enough coins for everyday commerce. Millions upon millions of pennies were struck that year to keep up with demand across the country. The Denver Mint played a key role in this effort, producing a massive number of Lincoln cents to be shipped into circulation. Now let's take a closer look at what makes the 2006 D Lincoln penny unique. On the front, or obverse, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces to the right with the word liberty to the left of his profile. The date, 2006, appears to the right, and just below it is the small D mint mark indicating Denver. Above Lincoln's head are the words "In God We Trust," a phrase that has appeared on U.S. coins for decades. On the back, or reverse, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial design. This design was used from 1959 until 2008, making it one of the longest-running reverse designs in U.S. coin history. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. Above the building are the words United States of America, and below it is 1 cent, with E pluribus unum displayed across the top of the memorial. The metal composition of the 2006 D penny is another important detail. Unlike older pennies made mostly of copper, this coin is composed of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. This change was introduced in 1982 to reduce production costs. As a result, the 2006 penny feels lighter than older copper cents, and it has very little intrinsic metal value. Its worth comes entirely from collectability and condition, not from the metal itself. So why would anyone care about a penny that was made in huge numbers and is still commonly found in circulation? The answer lies in condition, errors, and collector interest. While the standard 2006 D penny is not rare, certain examples stand out. Coins that were never circulated and remain in pristine condition can be more desirable to collectors, especially if they show sharp details and original luster. Mint errors are where things get interesting. During the minting process, small mistakes can happen. On 2006 D Lincoln pennies, collectors sometimes look for off-center strikes, where the design is slightly shifted to one side. Others search for die cracks, where thin raised lines appear on the coin due to damage to the minting die. There are also cases of weak strikes, where parts of the design appear faint or incomplete. One of the most talked about types of errors involves double dies. This occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives a misaligned impression, causing parts of the lettering or date to appear doubled. While strong double die errors are rare for 2006 D pennies, minor doubling can still attract collector attention, especially if it is clear and visible without magnification. When it comes to value, realism is important. A regular 2006 D Lincoln penny that has been circulated is usually worth just 1 cent. Even uncirculated examples often sell for only a small premium, sometimes just a few cents to $1, depending on condition. However, error coins are a different story. A noticeable off-center strike from 2006 D can sell for $10 to $50, depending on how dramatic the error is and how well the coin is preserved. There have also been auction results showing high-grade uncirculated 2006 D pennies selling for modest but respectable prices. Coins graded by professional services in near-perfect condition have sold for several dollars, and in rare cases, higher when collectors compete for top-quality examples. These prices won't make someone rich overnight, but they show that even modern pennies can have collector value under the right circumstances. Identifying a real 2006 D Lincoln penny is fairly simple, but it still matters. First, check the date and mint mark. The year 2006 should be clearly visible, with a small d beneath the date. The coin should have a smooth edge, as all Lincoln cents do. The weight should feel light, consistent with zinc-based pennies. If the coin feels unusually heavy, it may be from an earlier copper era or could be altered. To avoid fakes or altered coins, pay close attention to the mint mark. On genuine coins, the D is clean and well-shaped, matching known examples from the Denver Mint. Added or altered mint marks often look rough, misplaced, or oddly shaped. Using a magnifying glass can help spot these differences. For valuable error coins, professional authentication is always recommended. There are also some fun and surprising facts tied to the 2006 D penny. By this time, the U.S. Mint was already losing money on penny production due to rising metal costs. This sparked ongoing debates about whether the penny should continue to be made at all. The 2006 penny sits right in the middle of this modern controversy, representing a coin that many people question, yet still use every day. Another interesting detail is how often these pennies are overlooked. Because they are so common, many people never examine them closely. This makes the occasional error coin even more exciting, since it can hide in plain sight for years before being discovered in pocket change. Collectors today appreciate the 2006 D Lincoln penny not because it is rare, but because it represents a snapshot of modern American coinage. It marks the final years of the Lincoln Memorial reverse and the continuation of a design that defined generations. For new collectors, it's an accessible entry point into the hobby. For experienced collectors, it's a reminder that value doesn't always come from age alone. In the end, the 2006 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny teaches an important lesson. Even the most ordinary objects can carry stories, history, and hidden details if you're willing to look closely. The next time you see one of these pennies, take a moment before you spend it. Check the details. Look for something unusual, because sometimes the most common coins are the ones that spark the greatest curiosity. And who knows, the penny you almost ignored today might be the one that starts your interest in American coin collecting tomorrow.